The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Afternoon. This is Julia Talbot at the Department of Family and Support Services, and I welcome you to this applicant webinar for the Chicago Resiliency Fund 2.0 Program Administrator RFP. This RFP was released on February 22nd, and it will be due on March 15th at 12 noon of this year. Just a few housekeeping details before we get started, which is that due to the volume of participants, everybody's been placed on mute. If you have a question, please write it into the question box, and we will either go through those questions orally or we will answer the question for you in the box, or most likely both. Additionally, because I put you on mute, please use the question box to notify us of any technical issues you might be having with the broadcast at all. We're really excited to have you here. I am joined by my awesome colleagues, Elisa Rodriguez, who is, I believe, the managing deputy. I'm terrible with titles, I'm afraid. Mark Sanders, who's in charge of our workforce and human services programs, and Claire Lambden, who is of our policy division. Let's just start with the agenda, and then I'm going to turn it over to Elisa so that she can get us started. So you'll see here, we're going to go through the programmatic elements of the RFP first, review the timeline, and then we will go on to discuss how to make the application, the physical application in the City of Chicago's e-procurement system, which is how we manage our applications and RFPs. So take it away, Lisa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elisa Rodriguez, Managing Deputy Commissioner at DFSS. I want to thank you for joining our webinar today to learn more about the Chicago Resiliency Fund 2.0. As outlined in the RFP, the city has authorized a $10.7 million emergency cash fund for residents who were excluded from prior federal stimulus relief. These populations include, but are not limited to, those undocumented residents, households with elderly or disabled adults who were claimed as dependents, and households with dependents aged 17 to 24. This fund will provide a one-time $500 cash payment to up to 20,000 eligible residents who earn a household income at below 300% of the federal poverty level. The overall intent of this fund is to reach residents who have been negatively economically impacted by COVID-19 and to support their path to greater economic stability. Next slide. The Chicago Resiliency Fund 2.0 provides the City of Chicago with a unique opportunity to envision and test a system that reduces barriers to engagement, enrollment, and receipt of benefits, and empowers individuals to use resources to meet their greatest needs. For this fund, we have 4 goals that we would want to achieve. Provide financial relief, especially those who have been hardest hit by COVID. Second, improve residents' well-being, which includes their financial stability, health, and well-being of not only the participants, but their families. Third, transform the city's homeless human services system by improving and promoting the city's capacity to create and deliver impactful, inclusive, people-centered anti-poverty programs that build on existing safety nets. And fourth, to build a field of practice. This will enable policymakers and advocates across local, state, and federal levels to learn from our pilots, which is right now the largest program to reach in the US. On this next slide are the City of Chicago's APR investments. The city has proposed these investments to support an equitable recovery based on a whole of government response to community safety, urgent assistance to families in need, access to reliable city services, and a wide set of economic opportunities, which include programming for mental health services, violence prevention services, affordable housing, youth, homelessness, arts, and culture. The city's investments seeks to have a broad range of anticipated strategic impacts. To learn more, we encourage you to visit www.chicago.gov/recovery plan. Currently, there are 2 opportunities that are open now. The first one being the $4.8 million Domestic Worker Relief Fund, which is also a one-time subsidy of $500. That RFP is due back March 11th at noon. And then the second is what we're talking about today, the $10.7 million Chicago Resiliency Fund 2.0 for households excluded from federal stimulus support. Again, this is also a one-time subsidy of $500. The responses for this are due March 15, 2022. For each of these funds, DFSS is seeking a program administrator to manage all of the components that are necessary, which include outreach, applications, verification, and payment distribution. I will now pass it on over to my colleague, Mark Sanders, for the scope review.
So the RFP. DFSS seeks proposals from agencies to perform the 5 program components critical to providing cash transfers to the focus population. These components are listed below: program management and coordination, the technology platform, outreach and engagement, application verification, payment, distribution, and management. We're asking that respondents be able to perform all of these duties or have partners in place to execute these features. The role of the program administrator is to build and execute processes and infrastructure, and to manage people resources that facilitate a successful relief fund for previously excluded residents. The primary objectives of the program administrator are to design and execute a communication and outreach strategy that targets previously excluded residents and ensures smooth, consistent messaging and implementation. Design and manage tech-enabled processes for application, selection, onboarding, and ongoing program communications, and supports that minimize participant burden and deliver a positive, empowering experience. Respondents must demonstrate that they currently have the technology to administer this program and IT personnel capable of customizing this technology as needed. They must be able to manage timely and accurate data collection and payment disbursement activities, be the lead agency on all in-program technical assistance to participants, such as application troubleshooting, payment updates, and resolving other problems and concerns as required. They must be able to work with the city to design and build an application that collects critical, important information in a clear, accessible, and culturally appropriate way. And they must support the city with federal reporting requirements associated with the fund. Our focus population for this grant are previously excluded residents. This means undocumented residents, individuals lacking a social security number, valid for employment, who were not eligible for funds for prior rounds of federal stimulus relief. Specific thresholds and proof of eligibility will be based on federal Treasury guidelines, and DFSS will finalize with the program administrator and program evaluator if applicable. Households with dependent, elderly, or disabled residents. Dependents who are elderly or disabled adults were not included in the total household awards for the first and second round of economic impact payments because such individuals did not meet the qualifying children standard set by Congress. Households with young adults claimed as dependents. This includes dependents ages 17 to 24 who were not included in the total household awards for the first and second round of economic impact payments because such individuals did not meet the qualifying children standard set by Congress. The program will prioritize selecting individuals and households who have not received any other prior local or state COVID-19 relief, but all qualifying individuals and households will be eligible to apply regardless of citizenship or immigration status. DFSS estimates that the following volume of applicants and program participants to inform the respondent's proposal content, staffing, and budgeting. A maximum of 20,000 selected households to receive the $500 one-time cash assistance. We anticipate more than 30,000 applicants to the program. Contract milestones. The RFP was released on February 22nd. The RFP applications will be due on March 15th. And 2 weeks from March 15th, we intend to have a program design finalized. Within 2 weeks of selecting the candidate, we intend to have the program design finalized, the service blueprint finalized, and the customized CRM and application management system finalized within 1 month of selection. 2 weeks for program design and service blueprint. One month for customized CRM application management system. April 15th, the application goes live. And on May 30th, we would like first payments to be available to participants. Next slide. Performance goals and outcomes. DFSS intends on reaching the hardest hit focus populations and delivering a positive experience. And these should be the top objectives for the program administrator. We would like to track progress toward achieving the outcome goals of this program and assess success. DFSS will monitor a set of performance indicators that may include, but are not limited to, percentage and number of applications successfully submitted, program uptake, percentage and number of participants successfully enrolled, receiving their one-time payment, and reported participant satisfaction. Selection criteria. DFSS seeks respondents that demonstrate a clear understanding of the focus population and their strengths, assets, needs, and challenges. Expertise working with the focus population and has relevant capabilities and/or infrastructure needed to serve these groups. A commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. Leadership that reflects and engages the diverse people of the communities it serves. DFSS also seeks respondents that have qualified staff in a staffing pattern that addresses all required service components, a strategy to hire new staff and/or subcontractors in a timely manner, adequate systems and processes to support monitoring program expenditures and fiscal controls, the ability to provide and maintain a technology platform that can house key public-facing program details and provide critical information optimized for broad usability. Existing systems must evidence the ability for multi-channel program communications, CRM, program application, and data collection and management that can be quickly customized to support the fund. Demonstrated experience in collecting, storing, protecting, managing, and analyzing a secure CRM system containing personal identifying information and other sensitive information. DFS also seeks respondents that have demonstrated experience implementing and managing large, complex, multi-partner economic inclusion, financial assistance, racial equity, and/or community development programs to designated beneficiaries. Identified and proposed a communication strategy that is clear, accessible, and culturally appropriate. A proposed plan, including trusted community partners as subcontractors, to successfully communicate and conduct outreach and recruitment to the focus population. Propose a design and implementation plan to efficiently review and approve applicant documentation for participation while minimizing participant burden and controlling for possible fraud. The ability to administer payments to program participants, track paying and spending data, provide customer service and report out to DFSS and program evaluator if applicable, the respondent must demonstrate a plan to secure low or no fee online banking options for participants. DFSS seeks respondents that have demonstrated evidence of a strong past performance against desired outcomes and performance metrics and/or other notable accomplishments in providing services to the focus population. Experience using data to inform and improve its services or practices. The relevant systems and processes needed to track and report performance on program outcomes in order to be data-driven. DFSS seeks respondents that demonstrate the fiscal capacity to implement the proposed program, demonstrates reasonable implementation costs and funding requests relative to its financial and human resources, and we request that the proposed budget supports the proposed scope of work or work plan. For the attachments, we are asking that you be sure to attach reports, studies, or other documentation that show performance toward reaching the program goals, demonstrate results and accomplishments. Be sure to attach the resumes for key staff that are overseeing the program. Be sure to attach job descriptions for key positions overseeing the program. And be sure to attach your organization's budget and budget narrative. Budget or cost proposals are as follows. The term of the contract under this RFP will be from April 1, 2022 to December 31, 2023. We anticipate funding one agency. The maximum award will be $10.9 million for the entire term of the project. Up to $10 million of this amount is a pass-through grant, which shall be provided to participants in compliance with program requirements, and up to and between $290,000 and $540,000 of this amount is for the selected respondents' administrative costs. There is no match requirement. Please submit a budget for 1 year, 12 months of services, and be thoughtful and inclusive when developing your budget. Apply for your program's actual costs. Use the budget narrative document to outline how and why your proposed costs were determined. Use the reasonable cost question on the application to discuss how your proposed costs are realistic. Advances. This is a new policy for the city, and advances for administrative costs will be considered according to the city's advancement payment policy. The respondent is required to incur and pay expenses before seeking reimbursement from the city. However, with respect to the cash assistance costs only, the grantee may ask the city to reimburse approved cash assistance costs on an expedited basis. In this case, the city would transfer funds directly to one or more third-party providers engaged by the grantee to provide A, prepaid debit cards, B, physical checks, and/or C, other cash assistance disbursement methods to which the city and grantee may agree. Each third-party provider would then use these funds solely to provide approved cash assistance payments under the program. The grantee will be responsible for the accuracy of all expedited cash assistance reimbursement requests, and any errors found during the city's audit of the supporting documentation will require the grantee to reimburse the city for the disallowed costs. The grantee will be required to provide supporting documentation within 7 days after the city provides funding for each distribution, and will be responsible for ensuring that any unexpected funds are promptly returned to the city. Selection and transition timeline. Pre-proposal webinar is happening right now as we speak, just a little bit sooner than 2 o'clock. The due date for any pre-proposal questions are due on tomorrow, March 1st. It's tomorrow. So if you have any questions that we are not able to respond to today, please make sure those are submitted immediately after our presentation, and we will work to include them in our agenda. Applications are due on Friday, March 15th at 12 noon. Julia will go into this. There are no exceptions to that, and the program period begins on Friday, April 1st. I repeat, applications are due on March 15th, 2022 at 12 noon.
Thank you so much, Mark. And yes, just to underscore, applications are due March 15th, 2022 at 12 noon. And that is, as Mark indicated, a hard deadline. The city's e-procurement process, which is what you're going to use to make an application for this RFP, is in the e-procurement system. You access e-procurement via iSupplier. If you do not have if you haven't done business with us before, or you're new to this process, you'll need to register for an iSupplier account, and that's your vendor account that allows you to access the e-procurement system. The e-procurement system is used citywide to make for application purposes, and then if you're awarded a contract, it's going to be what you're going to use to voucher and really do the nuts and bolts execution of the contract. All goes through e-procurement. For those of you old timers, it used to be known as FMPS. However, the way this system is set up, that we only can accept applications in e-procurement. Do not send them to us via email and or any other methods. We don't take paper copies anymore. And once the application period is ended, you cannot submit an application. We cannot receive it. You will not see it. You will not be able to access it. And if you miss that deadline, the only way to get you in is to re-release the RFP, which would mean that everybody who did get their materials in on time would have to reapply. So we are very, very reluctant to open things up. It's a difficult process, and so I just highly recommend that you get your stuff in on time. In fact, as I will say, I think in the next slide, I actually really suggest that people aim to submit the day before. I know that this RFP is on a real tight timeline, but it's much better just to get your stuff in the day before. The submission process, as you know, will take, or as you'll find out, it isn't just click and whoosh, it's gone. You really have to go through quite a few screens, and we'll be doing that later in the presentation. I'm going to go through a couple of the functions that we normally do. So in terms of application tips, I like to tell everybody, start early, save often. Review your RFP narratives and application questions closely. Remember that your application questions align with the scope and selection criteria also outlined in the RFP document, and use the information that the RFP gives you for guidance in formulating your answers, especially if you have questions on what direction you should sort of approach or what we are really looking for. Carefully review the selection criteria to make sure that your answers align with that criteria, that you're answering the question. We use that selection criteria to build our evaluation documents off of. And so it all kind of ties together from the narrative and scopes, flow of the application questions and the selection criteria. The application question align with the selection criteria, as does the evaluation tool aligns with that selection criteria. When you are writing your application, there's a 4,000 character limit, which includes punctuation and spaces for each unique question. E-procurement will not count that for you. So I always tell people to do the work of writing and crafting your answers in a word processing program that will count that for you. And then, upload it, cut and paste it into e-procurement when you have it all the way you want it. If you just write into the e-procurement environment and you go over the 4,000 characters, it just kind of cuts off your answer mid-word, really. E-procurement works best with the Internet Explorer browser. It was built onto the Internet Explorer, on Explorer. So built off of an Oracle platform, if anybody cares to know. But it really works fine on every other browser I've tried it on, and that's, Firefox, Mozilla, Safari, Chrome, really all of them. If you are having a problem, you're just getting bounced out a lot, try it on Internet Explorer. Sometimes it was built on that, so it will work a little bit smoother, but it will be fine in every other browser. Pro tip: do not use the back button on your browser when you're in the e-procurement environment. What will happen is that e-procurement will pretend that it's saving your work, but it won't. And when you go to save your work, it will give you an error message and kick you out. When you go back in, nothing will have been saved. So that's, fun. So just don't do it, or try to remember not to do it. Tips for, further tips for working in e-procurement is you can submit your application and later amend it up until the due date time, March 15th, 2022 at 12 noon. So you can submit, you can pull back, update if you want. You can really submit and you can apply. If you're new, this is a great way to do this, to get yourself familiar with the submission process and, in a non-pressured atmosphere. And that trial run, I think, is really it's kind of a nice feature. Avoid the rush and possible mishaps by submitting early, and plan on your submission taking 30 to 60 minutes. We're going to go through how to accept an amendment and how to do the submission. I'll walk you through those slides. The presentation slides, this PowerPoint, is going to be posted onto the DFSS website, and as will the recording of this webinar posted onto the DFSS website under the specific funding opportunity, which in this case is the Resiliency Fund, Chicago Resiliency Fund 2.0. So those will be available. You can also always call me for e-procurement kind of help, and you can call the e-procurement hotline at 312-744-4357 or 744-HELP. Just note that the hotline operates during business hours only, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You can call me, you can email me. My number and my email address are going to be at the end of this presentation, and they are also in the RFP document. So you should be able to, there's plenty of help out there. Just remember, though, that, we have RFPs. This hotline works for the whole city. And so you want to be able to, when we start early, then you have time for people to give you a response. And it's not pressured, that if somebody else is talking to me, that I can call you back and that there is time for me to call you back. And that goes the same through the procurement hotline. If you are a person who prefers not to speak to people, there are plenty of training materials on the internet or on the DPS, the Department of Procurement Services website. Here's a link to them. It's online training materials. The stuff that will be most relevant to your experience as an applicant or a vendor would be under the delegate agency materials. Again, if you have other questions about registration, definitely if you have questions about how to register, email customer support or call that helpline. And if you have you're interested in what other funding opportunities are available through DFSS, you can always go to our webpage, and there's an alert section which has all the current stuff, and a funding opportunities little tab that you can click on that has usually both the stuff that is hot now, that is up and out, and then some of the more recently released RFPs that you can look at. There'll be links to those in the e-procurement system, because e-procurement is really where we post everything, and that's about the only place we post it, because it's just have better version control of that. So that being said, we do amendments to change, update, and amend our RFP documents. The results of the questions that we get today will be written into an amendment and posted within probably a week. And because of that, you have to know how to accept an amendment if you want to proceed with doing your application. So we're going to I'm going to walk you through those steps. Again, these slides are going to be posted on the DFSS website. If you email me, I can send you just the directions with these screenshots. And I'm always there. I'm always available to help people, to help walk people through. So in this case, we're looking, the RFP you are interested in has been amended. And in order to start your application, you're going to need to acknowledge and accept the amendment first. So to do that, you're going to have this actions bar on the right-hand side. It says create a quote. You'll pull down the menu to put it to create quote. That's how you start an amendment. And then you'll hit the go button. Because the the RFP has already been amended, you can click on this view amendment history on the left-hand side. That will take you to the amendment itself in the amendment document. And so that's kind of what you do to first get started. If you'd already started an application, you'll go in to go in to work on your application. You'll be prompted to accept the amendment, and you'll get a slide. At some point, you'll press go. You'll get something like this, or if you were already working, you'll get this screen. When you've already worked, the acceptance of the amendment allows the system to pull your partially completed application into the amended RFP, and so you can continue working. You don't have to redo anything, thankfully. So in this screen, this is kind of where you start the acceptance and acknowledgement process. You're going to, if you click on the document number, you'll get the RFP and all of the attachments. You can see in this middle bar, it has a brief amendment description. It's sort of like a one sentence that says, this amendment contains the frequently asked questions. This amendment contains, this, we did a few RFPs ago, we had indicated we were doing advances, but we didn't have the most up-to-date language. And so we did an amendment that had advanced language in it. If for some reason we had to change the due date, it would be in the amendment. And then if you want to review the changes, you're going to hit on this little eyeglass or infinity sign memo on the right-hand side to review the changes that the amendment puts forth. And finally, when you're done, you're going to acknowledge the amendment, and that's either on the upper or lower bar of the screen. And that will take you, the acknowledgement will take you to this, where you're going to accept your acknowledgement. So to accept the acknowledgement, you're going to click this very tiny box saying that you accept the terms and conditions of the RFQ and also acknowledge the changes made to the RFQ document, and then the name of the document. And then you'll hit the acknowledge button on the right-hand side, which will take you to a confirmation of your acknowledgement. So all you do in this screen is hit yes. And this is actually, it says if a response has been submitted previously, resubmission is required. So that would be only if you had already responded to the RFP, which probably, I've never had that happen before. But if you already responded, that would be there. So you would hit yes, and then you get this final acceptance of the terms and conditions. So again, you're going to click on a very small box down at the bottom of the left-hand side, read and accepted the terms and conditions, and then you're going to accept on the button on the right-hand side of the screen. And that is how you accept an amendment. Then now I was just going to do a few screens on how to submit an application, and then we'll go on to questions. So when you are ready to submit your application, you're going to start by saving your draft one last time, and then you're going to hit continue. When you hit continue, what's going to happen is that the e-procurement system is going to do a scan of your entire document and kind of look for things that it thinks might be problematic or wrong in your application. And so you'll hit continue, it will do a scan, and then you'll get error messages. So in this case, I just have the example of sort of two very common error messages, but when I've sort of played with the system before, even if I hit, even if I do what I think is like a real facsimile of what I would be doing to do an application, it's not uncommon to get a pile of these error messages, which is, kind of anxiety producing or a little unsettling. But just remember, keep your cool. These are all solvable problems. The most common error message that people get is this: you must quote at least one line in the RFQ. And in this case, it refers to that you want to go to this lines tab and put in some placeholder numbers. The lines tab is something that we use when contracts have been issued, but at the RFP stage, the application stage, it's not necessary. We're going to look at the Excel spreadsheet budget that you upload as your application. We're not going to look at these lines. You can put in the lines, you can put in whatever you want. You can put in placeholder numbers. You can put in the numbers that you're actually doing or applying for. But we are not, I want to just make sure that you know that we're not going to look at those lines from an evaluative standpoint. We just need you to fill this out so that this error message goes away, basically. Another really common error message that people get is this: a quote value is required for requirement, and then it will say the name of the requirement. So in this case, it's e-procurement speak, as a quote value would be an answer. So that's the thing that's limited to 4,000 characters, including spaces and punctuation. And a requirement really refers to the application, the section of the application questions. And in this case, all of the individual questions have names. And so this one is just saying that the quote value you didn't put in, or you didn't provide as an answer for the question, put in your first name. This is really helpful just to know that it's a kind of a basic scan, just to know that you have, in fact, answered all the questions. So after you have done all of this and you've gotten rid of all of your error messages, you are ready to proceed and submit. And at this point, when you click that continue button, you will be put into this review and submit phase, which you can see because it says so on the upper left there. And at that point, see on the right-hand side, you have this printable view. This is where you could actually download a copy of your application in total as a PDF. Once you submit it, you're not going to have access to your application. So if you want to see what it's like, or you don't want to ask us to send it back to you, then you just do that printable view. You'll get the PDF and you'll have a copy of it. That is how e-procurement does. The other thing, though, is when you're in this review and submit phase, you're going to be able to just sort of keep scrolling through your entire application and see and just do that final visual check to see if it is the way you want. Here's your attachments on the top. You'll check to see if you have all the attachments you need, and then you can see all your answers in this quote value column on the right-hand side. And then you're just going to scroll all the way through your application. And at the bottom, you'll get to the electronic signature. Now, e-procurement requires that you put in the name and the title first before you click this little box. If you click the box first, like I do because it's the first thing, you'll get an error message telling you to submit your name and do the name and title screens first. So after it's probably not a hurdle for everybody, but it's just a hurdle for me apparently. So after you complete the electronic signature, on the farther than I could put in the screenshot right-hand side, you'll see this little submit button, and you click the submit button, and then you'll get a confirmation screen. So the procurement system, e-procurement, will send you a confirmation to the email associated with the application within 24 hours of your submission. If you want something more, a rapider experience, and that, don't hesitate to call or email me and let me know. And I'm more than happy to look it up and confirm that you have made your submission. I can see people working on their applications, and pretty much the minute you hit submit, I can see that you've submitted. And it is my pleasure to let people know that they have made their application successfully. Doing an application can be a real nerve-wracking thing, and if this makes your day a little bit easier, I'm more than happy to do it. So that is why I tell people, so you can see you have to go through quite a few screens and steps here. That's why I tell people to budget that 30 to 60 minutes to turn in your application, make that submission. We always have a few people that end up going down to the wire, and sometimes they don't make it in. And once that gate closes, once that application period is finished, it's very, very, very hard, if not basically impossible, to get people, get applications in. We really just don't accept applications. That concludes what I have to say about the e-procurement system. And now I'm going to turn it back over to my colleagues here, and we'll be happy to take questions. You can see here, if you have questions post the RFP, post this webinar, please reach out to myself or Mark. I am good for non-programmatic questions, so ask me stuff about e-procurement. Mark is the real, he is the programmatic lead, and he is the person that you should be asking any programmatic questions, including things about the budget. I'm just going to run through some of the questions that we have here, and hopefully if people have more questions, this is the time to put them into that questions box. So the first was, will the presentation slides be available to us? And that is yes. All the slides and a recording, so the PowerPoint and a recording of this webinar will be posted on the DFSS website, most likely tomorrow, maybe today, but tomorrow or the day after, but shortly. They will be made available shortly. They will be on the DFSS website underneath the funding opportunity that's associated with. And then, is the webinar for $500 stipend, or is this not for profits? So I think that was a question about, I think that perhaps that was a person who was an applicant. So, or I know that I've been getting a certain number of emails from people who are interested in applying for assistance for the program, and that they ask, I'm the email that they can find, so they ask me. I think the answer here is also who is the eligible applicant, and in this case, it's not not-for-profits. Rodriguez, Elisa, would you like to step in?
Yeah, so hopefully I understand your question. This RFP, the Chicago Resiliency Fund, is seeking a program administrator that would be the entity that would work with eligible participants to administer the grant and issue out the $500 payments. It is not for applicants to apply for the actual program, but rather for the administrator to be able to manage the program.
Are there other questions? This is the great time. Or any clarifying comments that any of my illustrious colleagues would like to make about this program. So does the administrator reach out to other organizations to do outreach? Mark?
So, go ahead, Mark.
Part of the selection criteria is to be able to connect with underserved populations. You may submit a proposal that includes an outreach partner. So I'm not sure if that's what you're asking for this particular program. There is no separate RFP for outreach work. So I'm not sure what the question entails. But you are welcome to work with other organizations, to work with partner agencies, to work with outreach organizations to make sure that you are connecting with the target population.
So here Claire has added, the program administrator will subcontract with partner agencies to design and implement outreach and recruitment strategies that engage with previously excluded residents and produce high levels of program uptake. So we're expecting that as the program administrator, you're going to be subcontracting with partner agencies as you need to for outreach, or I think any of the other components. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll just jump off mute. That's correct. And that's all in the RFP, outlined in the RFP, and in the e-procurement, you'll see areas to put in those MOUs and your programs and your program partners, excuse me.
Much clear. So, yeah, are there any other questions? This is always like the Ferris Bueller part of the webinar for me. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, then I think we're going to, conclude the webinar. There is all additional questions. If you come up with them at a later date, please send them to Mark as for program questions, so that we can incorporate them into the amendment. Where I think we're scheduled to try to put the amendment for this RFP out. Let me look at my little calendar. I'm thinking if we have probably it will be out by the end of the week or early next week with any luck. And I so appreciate that you are interested in this application and making this application. And thank you so much for coming to the webinar and learning about this opportunity. Does anybody have anything they would like to add?
Forward to receiving your applications. And thank you, as Julia mentioned, thank you for your participation.
enjoy your Monday.